Hello, and welcome to the 18th episode of Recluse Horror. This is a daily horror movie review podcast. Just a little background on the project. Back in April, on my birthday of last year, I decided I wanted to watch and review a horror movie every single day. I have done so for the past 285 days, although only the last 18 have been podcasts. Before that, it was text reviews. So every episode, I go over one movie that I watched that very night, and I go over another movie that I went through in my text reviews, and just give any impressions that I have left, aided, of course, by the text review. So with me again today is Sam.
Hey.
And the movie that we watched was The Earth Dies Screaming from 1964. But it doesn't really die screaming, does it?
No, not really, no. Almost in no way.
So, how did you feel about it?
I like the movie quite a bit.
Uh-huh.
I could see how other people wouldn't.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't seem like...
It has broad appeal.
Yeah, broad appeal, but it's very close to stuff I really like.
Mm-hmm.
And I could see no one else in the world liking it in a way, but I really like the feel and type of movie that this is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I thought it was all right. I don't really see a lot that separates it from other movies of this type, and it honestly feels, 1964, it feels a little older than I felt like it is. Yeah. I mean, yeah, there's some great stuff out in that period, and this just felt more like a 50s horror movie. Basically, the premise of The Earth Dies Screaming is, you follow a specific character. He's a pilot who, he goes and flies, he takes off from his original destination, and when he lands, pretty much everybody seems to have died mysteriously, and, just, are laying around where they were when they died.
Yeah.
And, that's kind of all. It's not everybody's dead. And that's it.
Yeah, it's kind of a standard. It's kind of standard in that way. I don't know how standard it was in
64.
Mine says, 58.
Really? Oh, no, that's a different movie.
Oh, okay.
Read the premise. Do you see?
Oh, it's a different movie?
Yeah,
okay.
That's My World Dies Screaming or something like that. That's a different one. Yeah.
But yeah, it seems like a pretty standard situation.
Last Man on Earth.
Last Man, yeah, Last People on Earth.
Yeah.
Last Man on Earth-esque, story. And it is, and I don't know how common it was at the time. I'm sure it's somewhat common.
Right.
But it probably wasn't as a long, trending, scenario like it is now.
Right.
So that's interesting. There's actually a lot of stuff that's interesting in that way.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of ideas that maybe were already reused in this movie.
Yeah.
Throughout the years and years keep getting reused. There's a little bit of Independence Day in there.
Yeah.
There's a little bit of Last Man on Earth in there.
Yeah.
Type of stuff from any movie that's like that.
Yeah.
A lot of things like that. So to me, that's super interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Seeing it in this
context
and era of movie.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I don't know. I would agree with some of that. I think you liked it a bit better than me. To be honest, though, I was really trying hard to stay awake for this one. I was having trouble. No, not because of the movie. I was just tired. But, no, it was pretty good. I thought the acting was pretty decent. Again, it has that sort of, the acting, I guess, is a little more 60s style than 50s style, I believe, personally. Where people don't necessarily react to things as strongly as they might in certain cases and stuff. I thought the sets were really neat. What did you think about the sets?
Mostly practical locations. But yeah, they look good.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of the cinematography and setup for it, looked just a bit more unique than a lot of movies at the time.
Yeah.
Especially, this is like a B movie.
Yeah.
So especially for like a B movie.
Yeah.
I love the credit, the title scroll in the beginning. Even the exit titles looked nice, but the intro one was really like simple,
slick.
yeah, and like not slick, but like corny, but still like very very streamlined and like interesting.
Yeah. I thought I liked the intro for the title of the movie.
That's what I mean.
But I mean the rest of the credits were a little like super dark black on just footage. Like I don't know. The rest of it wasn't.
That
as
doesn't
good to
bother me. I thought it was interesting in that way. Usually people do something different. I like the like dark lettering on the light screen.
Yeah.
The most interesting thing to me is the way the movie is, the way you could see that like things, you can take things from that movie that kind of carry on within science fiction and horror in other movies. There's some like you could kind of see some like M. Night Shyamalan like aspects of the movie, like just interesting different things, scenarios that weren't necessarily taken from this, because I don't think it's a very well-known movie. No. But stuff that in this movie that happens in other major movies years and years later. And it's just like interesting in that way. I thought it was just like a little bit longer episode of like the Twilight Zone. And I love the Twilight Zone. Right.
No, Twilight Zone is great.
So I don't know. I really liked it, and but I get to that. I'm like
probably in the minority.
I don't know. Yeah, I enjoy the style, the type of movie. It's kind of like psychological, kind of a movie, but like not dramatic. Yeah. So it's interesting to me.
I don't know. I thought most of the appeal was probably, comes down to nostalgia. I don't think there's too much that sets us apart, even though there are definitely some ways that this may have influenced later films or something that you can interpret that way. I also think sometimes the 60s acting is a little bit working against it, and that I feel like if they would have been able to build tension and stuff a lot better if they had been really going out there and like emoting a little more. Do you feel that way at all?
Disagreement.
No, you don't feel the same?
I don't feel the same.
I don't mean about the nostalgia thing. I mean specifically about the 60s acting.
I don't agree.
Don't agree. I didn't think it was bad. I just thought, I don't know, maybe it would have made things feel more tense and whatever. And again, I was really tired when I watched this one. I've woken up since, but
I think maybe the problem is the lead character is like a man's man. Yeah. So he's just like don't give a fuck about anything that's happened. So he feels very like aloof or like outside of any sort of reactions that much,
Well, I felt like everybody felt like that.
No, I think you're misremembering it.
Like, there's one character, I know.
There's a few of the characters, especially the male characters, especially at the time, where, we're supposed to be, men. Yeah. And you could see the reserve on them, where the female characters are doing more of the reactions. Yeah. Especially with the main character. And I actually think the main character is kind of awesome in that way in this. Cause he is like the character that makes everything work for the people. Yeah. But he does it even when he's doing something like great or there's something terrible happening. He's like super calm about it. Right. And like kind of matter of fact. And
it's like, okay, well now we're dealing with this.
Yeah. And I kind of really like that he wasn't just, I'm the manliest man here. He's just like, yeah, this needs to happen.
Yeah,
we're doing this. Yeah, there's no other option.
This is what we're doing now. Yeah,
and he talks about that to some of the other characters. Yeah. So it also feels like you could see that's the process he's going through to help them get through this situation.
Yeah. I just, for some reason, I don't really have much memory of like anybody.
Yes, because you're falling asleep the whole time.
It's probably true, but I don't have any memory of anybody really being like, "Oh my god, everybody just died. What happened?" Like, I mean, they definitely try to figure out.
I could name it, but it's not. it's
I mean, there's the
kind of
one guy.
spoilery.
The one guy, he definitely had a reaction to what was happening, but like I don't remember anybody else having like a total reaction to very much.
Also, a lot of the characters, they meet up later, so the initial impact you don't. I don't think you see anybody
true.
with the initial impact. It's
Maybe
mostly everybody
somewhere
meeting up after this has already happened, so they had time to be like.
To at least partially process it.
Yeah, to be like, oh, that was fucking weird. I'd like to see
a movie sort of similar to this one that did it with like realistic modern feelings about it, because I feel like everybody would be, well, not everybody. The successful ones wouldn't be, but just everybody would be like, holy crap, what the heck happened?
Yeah, like a 9/11 situation where people don't get out of bed.
Yeah.
For like a month.
Yeah, just freak out in whatever capacity that means for them. You can definitely see this, touches of this movie and other stuff too. There's like a series called Flash Forward that sort of has a similar start a little bit. There's also I'm pretty sure this movie came before it. I'm not positive, but there's a movie called Village of the Damned, which is based on a novel with a completely different title. It's like the Cuckoos of Dunwich Village or something like that.
Yeah, it is something like that.
Yeah.
I forgot that.
I just remember the Cuckoos part. It makes sense for the story. But Village of the Damned also does something similar to this. Definitely the remake does something similar to this. But yeah, I mean, it's neat, and in that there are things that, arguably you could say if somebody had seen this movie, they've taken it from this. And definitely parts of it are interesting. I did like the movie. I just, again, was really tired. And, I don't know, there was some stuff that didn't seem like it ever really got, any kind of conclusion to it.
That was kind of weird about the movie.
Yeah.
It didn't bother me too much because the pacing of the movie was pretty, like slapdash, so you're like in the movie or in their situation.
Right.
You're in like what they have to deal with and what they have to do in the movie.
Yeah.
So that I didn't get conclusions of certain things or whatever didn't bother me as much, because you just felt like you were like took them through the movie and you were at the end. You weren't. It wasn't muddled down with like, oh, what did happen here? What happened here?
Right.
And in some movies I can't really accept it. I thought it was fine in this one. I think the idea of having to know all the stuff in this particular movie didn't seem that necessary, the way it was made and the point of view you were watching it from. Yeah,
I mean, it's very much like almost it's very much entertainment. Like this is not a movie that's coming up with a lot of complex emotional, discoveries, and there's not a whole lot of...
No, it's like a what if type of scenario that
it does
that
feel
seems like the writer was, what if this happened in this area, and what would happen, and they wrote a little a story about it. It's not like overarching or big or anything.
Well, and it's only like an hour. It's like an hour and
1 minute.
Yeah, so 1 or 2 minutes. So yeah, it's not a super long one. It's not like they spend an hour and a half doing nothing. So, but yeah, I don't know. It's very much focused on the entertainment factor and very much less on like the actual repercussions of what's going on or what would happen.
Just on a large scale, I thought it was nice on the personal scale with the characters going through their own personal stuff with the situation.
Yeah.
But yeah, on a large scale, it's just like, it's like this happened and we're glossing over any other effects of it happening.
Yeah. Well, and they only go over the first few days, like...
Yeah, it's only supposed to take place in a couple days, or like only like maybe a week. Oh, no.
Yeah, no, it isn't that long. I was thinking something else. Yeah, I think, maybe a week. I would say a week. For some reason, for a minute, I was like, wait a minute, no, it's longer than that, but it isn't. Yeah, I don't know. Was there anything else you wanted to talk about?
No, I don't know any of the actors.
Yeah.
They were in some stuff, but nothing
Nothing you knew?
Yeah.
For some reason, I thought the pilot, he looked somewhat
super familiar, but
Doesn't
I
he?
looked up the credits and He didn't do many
anything.
movies after this one.
Huh. Okay.
Like 1 or 2.
Yeah.
And I thought he was good. I liked him.
I did too. I
usually
really
don't
likable.
like that type of character.
Mm-mm. Well, he doesn't come off all Charlton Heston-y.
Yeah, he's very... He's very matter of fact, but in a way you need to be, not in a way.
And he's not gruff. He's cordial, pretty much.
He's just trying to get stuff accomplished, and
he's goal oriented,
and not trying to piss people off and get things done.
He's not like, we're doing this my way. He's not worried about his masculinity. He's not. He doesn't feel like he needs to trounce over everybody's feelings or anything. He tries to do the best for everybody, but that's his main priority. Is like, no, we have to figure out how to do this, and we have to do it now. Like that's a thing.
Yeah,
there's a problem, it needs fixing. Yeah, exactly. And in that way, he is actually pretty charismatic. Again, the fact that he is that sort of character and he's not just a complete dickhole is like one of my favorite parts about that movie. I think it's weirdly unique, even though I think it's pretty common in real life, of a sort of character mindset, person mindset. And, for some reason, you just never see it in movies. This guy is always Charlton Heston. He's, kicking down doors and being a dick and stealing shit and whatever it is.
Yeah.
Okay, so that was The World Dies Screaming, although it doesn't, from 1964. Okay, so the next movie that we want to talk about is The Eyes of My Mother from 2016. Sam, how did you like this movie?
I like this movie a lot.
Yeah, I did too, actually. I thought it was really... This is one, actually might be one of my top, I'd say 30, maybe even top 25 picks for all of the reviews that I've done so far. I think it's really good. It's definitely creepy. So, The Eyes of My Mother is about a girl who lives in an isolated area. Her name is Francisca. And she lives with her parents in an indeterminate time and place in the countryside. When her family is struck by tragedy, Francisca is changed by the experience in ways that will forever affect her actions and the trajectory of her life. And that's pretty much all you really want to say about that one. So this is a really great debut. This was Nicolas, I want to say Pesce, but I bet that's wrong. Pesce, I don't know how to pronounce his name. I apologize. Nicolas Pesce is what I'm going to call him. Pesce. He's both the writer and director of this film, and it's his first film. And both of these are done just admirably well, in my opinion. The movie's filmed in black and white, which definitely adds to the bleak and desolate feeling that you get from this particular setting. There are a lot of distant shots of both scenery and actions, which serve to show the emotional separation of the characters from the things they're doing and also society as a whole. The movie gives you a sense of distance from the characters themselves and their own lives, not because they're outlandish or poorly acted, but because the ways that they react feel completely foreign in a horror movie. And it's sort of, it feels true to life to me. I've definitely known people who react in these sorts of ways. Obviously, I've never known anyone who's had to react to these sorts of things. But, sort of reserved and so forth, that's a thing that exists. And, usually this sort of thing isn't, portrayed this matter-of-factly, I felt like. How did you enjoy the acting?
The acting was good. It's definitely not the strongest.
Really?
If I remember correctly, yeah, I don't think it was necessarily the strongest overall. The lead, she did a really good job.
Yeah.
A few of the other characters did a good job.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think anybody did bad.
Uh-huh.
I just maybe kind of saw some disconnects with the tone of the movie with some of the acting.
Really?
Maybe the mother was good.
Mm-hmm.
There's a few other just kind of thrown in characters.
Mm-hmm.
And these are probably mostly minor things. But it's just something I noticed. But the lead was very good, which is who you spend the majority of the time with.
The vast majority. Yeah.
There's the young version of the lead,
Yeah, when
and the
she's...
older version of the lead, the grown-up version of the lead, and both of them actually did very well.
Yeah, I think they were definitely the strongest.
Yeah, which is the main part of the movie.
Yeah. The family dynamic in this is sort of unique and seems really genuine, of the sort you can sometimes hear about, but it's definitely not every day. The effects of this unique upbringing, the severe isolation, and the tragic event that I alluded to before have had on Francisca are really profound, extreme even, but they don't feel completely outside of the realm of possibility, which I think is one of the weirdest things about this, because this movie's crazy.
Yeah, and it feels really real.
Yeah, it does.
It feels the way you could see people reacting to this.
Yeah. Well, when taking into account the girl's age at the time of the event and the way that it was handled, it doesn't feel outlandish or over the top to me. It just maybe rare. And rare things, that's what people make the movies, make movies about. So, yeah, I thought the acting personally was quite solid all around. All of the main characters have a pretty interesting feel. They're very quiet and subtle for the most part, which I thought was enjoyable. As they're setting up the characters, the thought crossed my mind about how odd all these people sort of are, and how great it would be to contrast by adding someone in from the real world, which they actually did at a certain point, remember?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And that was really good because that person feels much more like somebody you would meet.
And you feel like it's really happening.
Yeah. So I was really impressed that they thought to do that. And it does exactly what it should. It's very effective in doing that. It's totally jarring and uncomfortable in all the ways that it just has to be. But that was one of my favorite aspects. I remember thinking early on, like I buy these people, but the contrast would be so stark. And yeah, it was. So there is one problem with the acting, but it's probably not a huge deal for most audiences. So the family is of Portuguese descent, according to the movie, but they all have accents from completely different places. The mother, her accent is Brazilian, despite dialogue specifically stating that they were from Portugal. As I said, this is like a minor error, but for people who, speak Portuguese, it might be kind of strange. Francisca, her accent is continental, so there's no reason why her mother's should be different. I feel like, they speak in English for most of the movie, so it's probably not an issue, but I just remember being like, why would you write in a line about her being from Portugal?
When
you could easily
accents aren't consistent.
And and there's no reason why that character couldn't have been from Brazil, as far as I know.
And
as far as I can remember.
And there's not a ton of talking.
No.
So yeah, so it seems like a weird line to put in.
Yeah, to feel like it needs to exist in the movie. In the movie. It was written before it was cast, but I would have maybe, taken that line out personally. The only real flaw that I could come up with, was that there were several moments in which exactly what's happening on screen is unclear until later in the movie. It doesn't always feel intentional, just that things were filmed in a way that was just slightly too ambiguous for what was going on. Do you remember that at all?
Yeah, I remember that.
There was one event that happens in the first 20 minutes or so, that I didn't realize had happened until the last 20 minutes. So it didn't have the sort of impact on me that it might have if I had really realized what had happened. That was the worst offender, but there were a few other times in which something similar happened. In these cases, you usually have to figure it out, in the very next scene, it's very clear what did definitely happen. So it's a lot less disruptive. The reason for these problems is probably that they're attempting to keep up some sense of the theme and mood and not going for some sort of standard, horror shock value. Instead, they're going for a creeping sort of dread and uncomfortability that makes your skin crawl. And I think that's honestly a much more effective feel. But I really do think that a couple of those should have and could have easily been fixed without really betraying the mood. Do you remember which one I'm talking about? That
not specifically, but okay.
You remember?
I remember that being a thing that you weren't always 100% clear what happened because they cut away or
you
don't see the ramifications of the scene playing out.
Right.
They cut to like the next day or years later or
Yeah.
or weeks later or
Yeah.
something like that.
Mm-hmm.
So yes, you're not 100% sure if this actually happened, especially in a setting that feels so surreal.
Right. Yeah. So, you know, I do think this one would appeal to people who weren't just horror fans. It's very much a character study, but it's
super horrific.
Yeah, that's the thing, is it's so horrific. If you could get past the material that's in this, then I think even non-horror fans would like this one. That said, it is horrific. It really is. I mean, yeah, it is really, it's bad. So, I don't know. I really like this one. I would probably suggest this for anybody with any kind of like, the movie is definitely a little paced on the slower side.
But it's not a very long movie.
But it's not a very long movie. It's like 1:15 or something, you were saying?
Mm-hmm.
And it really has payoff. If you are a horror fan and you usually have problems with like pacing, or like if you have problems with slow pacing specifically, I say give this one a shot anyway and just try to power through, because the payoff on this movie is incredible for those people. It's gruesome, but it's a really good movie. I really enjoyed this one. I can't really think of a group of people I wouldn't suggest this to, like, that are horror fans. I have suggested it to people who I know have bad attention spans, and I just keep hoping that they'll watch it, because I would love to talk to more specifically, like with spoilers, to more people about this movie. It's one of my favorite things that I've stumbled across, and it's really, it's chilling. To me, it's chilling. Yeah, and again, this was a directorial and writing debut for this Nicolas Pesce, I guess. And so I'm really excited. This is another director that I'm pretty excited to see, like, continue on their career. This is the only thing I think I've seen by him, so I really can't say there's too much else to compare it to right now, but I'm really hoping to see some great things. It only came out in 2016, so.
Yeah, he's supposed to have a new movie coming out.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
What is it?
I don't know.
Samuel. I don't think did you look up the actors? Were they anybody in anything?
No, nobody really. The mother was in a few things, but very spotty. And characters that I don't know who they are. She was in Godfather Part 3,
Weird.
Noises Off.
Oh,
but
weird.
Both characters are characters I don't.
You don't know?
Don't know who they are in those movies. And then not much else. Some TV stuff for a few of them. Nobody in anything I can be like, oh, they were this character and they were good or bad or.
Well, they were probably very possibly like several of the actors seemed like they were actual fluent, Portuguese speakers. Like I said, one had a Brazilian accent and one had a continental accent, but you can still. They could have been in stuff in Brazil or Portugal, and that's why you don't see much American stuff. I don't know. Yeah, did you have anything else you wanted to talk about the movie?
I really liked the movie.
Yeah.
I like the sense of
dread,
artfulness put into the movie.
Yeah, that's true.
With it still being like, with some exceptions of maybe not understanding scene to scene as well as it could have been. But still being very artful and very followable. And very understandable and digestible in its own ways.
Yeah.
I think it really walked a good line on that.
Yeah. I really enjoy movies. I enjoy character studies, and even though this is such an extreme movie, I felt like I didn't have any trouble with a sense of, like, suspension of disbelief. I think maybe a lot of people would, but I think this is just one of those, like, one in a million, maybe more than one in a million, just like fractured human beings. You know, sometimes people's, you know, when you don't have proper mental health care or something like that, I think sometimes stuff
Product
like this
of your
can happen.
environment.
Exactly.
Very,
Nature
very
versus
common.
nurture. Both. I mean, nature and nurture in this case have played a role. So yeah, I mean, it's really something. And I think even if you don't believe it necessarily, which I can't imagine being a problem for many people, but even if you can't believe it and really sink yourself into it, I still think there's plenty to watch for this. Yeah, I don't want to stop talking about this one, though. It's good.
Yeah, you can't really talk about it.
I know, you can't talk about anything.
You
You can't talk about, anything without the spoilers. You know, you have to be so vague on this one, so. But yeah, I guess that's our review for The Eyes of My Mother, and that's our show. If you liked this, please rate, review, subscribe, whatever, on whatever site you found us. If you don't like the platform on which you listened to this already, we are on YouTube, iTunes, I keep forgetting iTunes, Stitcher, Podcast Addict, and most of the regular podcatchers. You can also reach out to me on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, or email me at reclusehorror@gmail.com if you have any questions or, comments or whatever. Please share this if you enjoyed it, or if you know someone who you think would, even if you didn't. So, yeah, Samuel, what is your rating for The Eyes of My Mother?
Oh, I don't know. One mother.
One mother?
She gave it one mother.
One mother, but you liked it.
No, it's oh yeah, mothers are bad, huh?
I guess that depends on your perspective.
No, 5 stars, 2 thumbs up.
5 stars. It's so good.
10 stars.
It's so creepy.
10 stars. No, 10 thumbs up.
10 thumbs
2
up.
stars.
2 stars.
2 stars up.
All right. Well, thank you so much for listening, and have a great night.